Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking one of the absolute largest and most ambitious infrastructure transformations happening anywhere on the planet right now. We're talking about Cairo's Transit Revolution. And, we aren't just talking about laying down a few new tracks or adding a couple of bus routes here. Egypt is completely reshaping its entire transportation landscape. They are moving away from just importing transit solutions to actually building a massive sustainable industrial ecosystem entirely from the ground up. It's a colossal undertaking, and we're going to look at exactly how they are putting this all together, piece by piece.
Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. We're going to tackle this in 4 parts. First, Cairo's massive metro expansion. Next up, the NERIC railway factory. Third, we'll get into the economics of localizing train production. And finally, training the new workforce. Starting off with Section 1, Cairo's massive metro expansion.
So to really wrap our heads around this transformation, we have to grasp the sheer physical scale of the new metro lines they're digging deep beneath the city. Just think about this number for a second. 100. That's 100 kilometers. That is the length of the new Metro Line 4 across all its planned phases. Honestly, the scale here is just incredible. Once it's completely finished, it's actually going to be the longest metro line in all of Africa. It's designed as this mega artery that will connect the far west 6th of October city, running straight east through New Cairo, Rehab, and right into the new administrative capital and its brand new airport. But here's the thing, Line 4 is way more than just your standard daily commuter route. It's essentially a major tourist artery connecting some of the most iconic landmarks in the world. We're talking about the Grand Egyptian Museum, the Historic Citadel, the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, and crucially, the pyramids. Phase 1 is actually set to open in the first half of 2028, and it's going to allow a tourist to literally step off a sleek, modern metro train right at the foot of the Giza Pyramids. I mean, that is an absolute game changer for how people will experience these sites. And what's really cool is how this perfectly illustrates their forward-thinking design. Metro Line 4 isn't just operating in its own little bubble. It's being actively designed to seamlessly plug into a much broader network of sustainable green transit. Specifically, it'll link up with the light rail transit, or LRT, and the new monorail systems. So imagine you're a passenger. You can effortlessly transfer from a traditional underground metro straight onto an elevated monorail. They're essentially weaving this highly efficient green transit web across the entire Greater Cairo area.
Moving on to Section 2, the NERIC railway factory. Okay, so now that we understand the huge scale of the physical tracks, the obvious next question is, where are all the vehicles that will actually run on those tracks coming from? Well, that brings us to another massive number, 300,000. That is the footprint in square meters of the brand new NERIC factory located in the Suez Canal Economic Zone out in East Port Said. This isn't just a big warehouse. It is the absolute largest industrial complex of its kind anywhere in Africa and the Middle East. It proves that Egypt is no longer content just buying trains from abroad. They've built this sprawling, basically city-sized facility so they can manufacture them right at home. So what exactly is rolling off the assembly lines at this massive facility? Well, the NERIC manufacturing units are laser-focused on the future of green transit. Their main specialty is producing electric trains, monorails, and high-speed trains. These are the exact electrified units that are going to populate those deeply integrated lines we were just talking about.
And what's absolutely vital to take away here is that this isn't some distant futuristic pipe dream that might happen 10 years from now. The operational timeline is incredibly rapid. Actual factory operations already kicked off this past April. And within the coming months, we're going to see the very first locally manufactured train roll right off that assembly line. It's a completely active, functioning industrial powerhouse today.
Which brings us to Section 3, localizing train production. Now, what's really interesting about this is the strategy. Building infrastructure on this scale is wildly expensive, right? So how exactly is Egypt pulling it off? Well, it takes a global village to build a localized ecosystem. While NERIC in East Port Said handles the core train manufacturing, some serious global heavyweights are setting up shop locally to partner with them. For example, Alstom has a facility over in Borg El Arab that's totally dedicated to producing railway systems. You've got the renowned Spanish company Colve handling the interiors and finishes for the trains, and Voiced Alpine is manufacturing all the complex switches and crossings. All the while, Egyptian companies are acting as the connective tissue, getting deeply involved in the heavy construction and the actual integration of all these systems. And here is the so what, the real economic payoff of all these international partnerships. 50 to 60%. Because they've built this localized supply chain, 50 to 60% of the costs for these high-speed transit systems are now handled entirely locally. That means they're paid for in Egyptian pounds rather than relying on foreign currency. When you're talking about billions in infrastructure, that is a massive structural economic shift. Let's break down exactly how this transforms into an economic engine that practically pays for itself. Step 1. Localizing the manufacturing drops the overall cost significantly right out of the gate. Step 2. Because so much of the project is sourced locally in Egyptian pounds, there's a drastically decreased reliance on expensive foreign loans. And then step 3. Whatever financial debt is left over is strategically designed to be repaid directly from the daily revenue generated by the transit passengers in freight operations. They've essentially taken a traditional heavy infrastructure expense and flipped it into a self-sustaining economic engine.
And finally, Section 4, training the new workforce. Because look, you can manufacture the most advanced, high-speed trains in the world, but it honestly means nothing if you don't have the human capital to actually run them safely. Egypt recognized this early on and built a super rigorous training pipeline. To start, they established a dedicated 4-year high-technological institute for railways to train drivers and tech operators from the ground up. But beyond that, step 1 of their wider pipeline involves selecting the absolute top university engineering graduates. Step 2, these brilliant grads then go through 6 months of incredibly intense, disciplined training at the Armed Forces Technological College. And then step 3, only after passing this grueling technological and practical training are they finally deployed to run the actual rail operations. And the sheer size of this human capital investment is just as impressive as the hardware. Public announcements drew in the best of the best, resulting in a highly specialized workforce featuring 550 top-tier engineers who are supported by 5,000 technicians and workers. Think about that. That is an entire army of skilled labor specifically educated and trained to manage and run this modern green transit ecosystem. Which really brings us back to the core message that summarizes this entire explainer. Piece by piece, building an industrial ecosystem. It just perfectly captures the reality of what's happening here. From a 100-kilometer metro line connecting the pyramids to the new capital, to a massive, city-sized factory in Port Said, to strategic partnerships with global brands like Alstom and Colway, all the way down to training thousands of specialized engineers. These aren't just isolated projects. They are part of a fully interconnected, carefully planned web.
So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought to chew on. How will this blueprint of localized infrastructure reshape future mega projects across the broader region? Because when a country successfully shifts from just importing its transportation to actually manufacturing it locally and training its own highly specialized workforce to run it, the long-term economic and technological impacts are truly profound. It really does set a brand new standard. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.